Welcome to The City That Votes, a television series from the Chicago Board of Elections, taking you behind the polling place curtain for a look at how our election system works in the Windy City. I'm Max Bever, Director of Public Information, and your host for the program. This episode, we're discussing voting by mail in Chicago. We know a lot of people have a lot of questions and maybe even a little trepidation about the process this year. So to talk about all the dates and deadlines ahead of the upcoming March 17th primary election, I'd like to welcome Clint Hurde, Manager of the Pre-Election Voting and Logistics Division. Clint oversees all things related to voting by mail and early voting here at the Chicago Board of Elections. So I'm going straight to the source on the matter. Clint, thanks for joining us on The City That Votes.
Thanks for having me, Max.
So I know that your team is really busy right now. It's only, a few weeks away from Election Day at this point. But let's start with voting by mail and really the basics and some of the deadlines that are coming up here. But ultimately, what does a voter need to do to vote by mail in Chicago?
Well, Chicago is a state where you don't have to do, city-state, where you don't have to apply as far as have a reason for not being requesting a vote by mail ballot. So that allows you you can go to our website, request a ballot through our website, which is, we took a lot of time to update and put a lot of work into it to make it easier and more friendly for the voters to go down, which is the quickest process, actually, for us to get you a ballot, get it turned around, get you set up to go. You can also mail a ballot, mail a request in, mail the request in, and we will send that out, get everything together for our mailing house to get you a ballot as soon as possible. We have a team waiting on phone calls if you need any assistance. A team of vote by mail employees, staffers are just waiting to help you out there. The deadline, we just actually started dropping mail yesterday, which is the statutory day that we should start mailing out ballots. And we have about 150,000 in that vicinity getting ready to go over the next couple of days, heading out to
That's
the
a
voters.
lot of ballots going out. So while I got the opportunity, so our website is chicagooelections.gov. So if you are interested in voting by mail for this election, go to chicagooelections.gov, click on our vote by mail section, and you've got a couple of different options, including if you are a preferred vote by mail voter, if you like getting that ballot ahead of every election, there's also what I understand is the permanent roster for voting by mail, right?
Yeah, the permanent roster, you have the opportunity to join that and choose what level you'd like to be in. One being you can choose to be a primary election, all elections primary. You're able to choose, you have to choose which party you want to be aligned with for that election. It's not a permanent thing because you could choose party to party depending on each election. We have it set up so you actually aren't necessarily locked into that party during the primaries. You have the opportunity to either go to our website or give us a mail-in ballot that you just say, hey, I want to switch parties, and then you have that opportunity.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that because our upcoming March 17th election is a primary, which is a bit different. There's several ballots that are up for voters to choose. We got 3 different party ballots this time heading into this election. That's Democratic, that's Republican, and Libertarian. So as you were saying, Illinois is a closed primary state, which means that you can't vote every party ballot. But compared to other states, you do not have to be registered. You don't have to register a party on your actual voter registration. So you're showing up to the polls, or when you're voting by mail, you're just making that request when you're making that application, correct?
Correct. You're not locked into a party. You just make your request. You can this year vote Democratic, next year vote another party. So it's completely up to you. I mean, your affiliation might change. You might have a reason and even nonpartisan. But nonpartisan is not part of this election because no referendums.
I'm glad that you brought that up because this is different than previous years. Generally, we do have many people who choose a nonpartisan ballot or they get that mailed to them ahead of time. But since we don't have any citywide referendum questions or any local precinct questions, we don't have a nonpartisan ballot this time. So if you're choosing a ballot for the primary and voting by mail, you do have to choose one of those parties and choose only one, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit more then about what happens if you are outside the country. There are many different types of vote by mail programs that I know that you run. So if you are traveling outside the United States, or you're currently living there but you're still a registered voter in Chicago, or you're active military, tell me a little bit how that process works.
Well, that would be UOCAVA, military and overseas. We have, again, as you know, we did a lot of work to update that site on our website. You can go to our website and request a FAPCA application. You take that application, you can fill it out state or with us and get that, send that in to us, and our team will input it into our system. We have and a lot of people are more concerned with emails. I know they get flooded inundated with emails and they don't like getting all those emails, but we make sure, as you know, we make sure to send emails to update people in the status of, and this is something we worked on during the summer to update our UOCAVA process. And people outside the country, military, there's a separate process that you can go to. What we do is, what happens is you fill out the application, you send that in to us, we streamline process that application. If there's anything missing, anything you need to update, we reach out and contact you, or you can contact us, and we are able to fix that for you as we go.
I've seen that in my years at the board that this is often a very hands-on process. So
Yes.
big kudos to your crew, to your staff. I know that they're working very directly with a lot of those folks. If you've got questions about this program, or you know somebody, or you've got a family member who's going to be outside the United States or is in active military service, please go to chicagoelections.gov. We have a section called Military and Overseas. It's going to take you through a step-by-step process of how to apply. But ultimately, you know, I understand that those are often a lot of the ballots that are coming back maybe a little bit later, because I want to talk a little bit more about how vote-by-mail ballots are counted. I know a lot of voters have specific questions. I know there's many different layers of law, and there's this 2-week counting period that happens after Election Day, correct?
Correct. 14 days after election. We're one of the states that's still allowed to count ballots if they're postmarked.
Properly postmarked, of course.
Properly postmarked by midnight on, this would be March 17th. So if we have that back in our office by that time, if it's postmarked back that time, we can count those ballots as they come in afterwards. We have 14 days. What we do is, as those ballots come in, we put them, we time check them, we make sure they have the right cancellation mark, or they were put through the system in time to make sure they met that deadline, and then we just pack them to the side, ready to count. So we do, because of the time frame, depending on where you're coming from or where that ballot is coming from, we try to push and make sure that when we sending these emails back into you, we're like, hey, you need to get this out so it'll get back to us in time. You only have 14 days.
Well, I know that's that 2-week period, but it's really kind of the majority of the ballots are coming back like close to Election Day, the first few days after. I think I've been at the board long enough to see that, you know, it is that last week. It's more of a trickle kind of at that point. But those are a lot of those military and overseas ballots that are coming back at that time. So I think it's an important period, that 2-week counting period after Election Day, to make sure that, you know, all those people who are overseas or serving are actually still having their vote counted.
Yeah, it's very important, Max, because the mail system works one way here, it works another way overseas.
For every different country, right?
Right. So there's always some lag time in between, but we don't want to disenfranchise anybody. We like to get those ballots in, and we make it as part of getting the ballots in. We work with the post office, and we actually go pick up ballots from the post office. So we don't wait for them to bring them to us. We go to the central post office downtown and just pick them up, bring them in, get them staged for processing. So we have a constant flow every day.
Well, I think, that after a lot of conversation of people of deadlines or when vote by mail ballot should be accepted, I have seen, your crew work in real time, and that 2-week period and counting period is just very helpful, I think, ultimately. Let's talk a little bit more about the actual process of how these get processed and then counted, because I've seen the machines that you run these things from, and it's pretty impressive. I think the technical term is agilis, but it's this big mail sorter that's like putting things out in wards and precincts and taking pictures of people's signatures. Take me a little bit through that process of what happens when you actually get your ballot, it's been approved, and now you're running it through the processing.
So as the ballots return, as we pick them up at the like I said, from the post office or through the drop box, what we do is they're brought down to our Agilis, as you said, our Agilis room. At that point, they're sorted, and depending on where they come from, if it's a drop box, we have a manual sorting process, so we know where every ballot came from, what drop box location it came from, and when it came in. So just in case a voter calls in, and
this is important. These tracking information is very helpful for you.
Right. As far as the votes, the ballots that come through the mail, those are then put into a cage. We take them that day, maybe not that day, depending on how many ballots we get in. Our team runs up to 15, 20,000 ballots through the machine in a day. Right? That machine then sorts them. It goes through a SIGVER process where those ballots are looked at by staff members and making sure that the signatures match up.
So this is an important point. This isn't like handing this over to a machine or to AI. This is always a human process that's looking at that signature on the ballot return envelope, correct?
Correct. It's always a human process. There's no AI. We're not allowed to use that. So it's in our code. So at this point, and I know other jurisdictions do have that switched on because you can switch it on the machine, but as far as the board, City of Chicago, State of Illinois, it's
I think a pretty important, protection for voters is making sure that this isn't just completely automated. And part of that, not being automated then is, so if everything looks good and that's been verified, then what happens with the election judges that actually open it up and scan that ballot?
So from that room, the Agilis room, we sort them into cages. Our team, we have a separate room where we open and process them, open a signature. So the ballots go over to our other room, and at that point, we call it central count. At that point, we have teams of judges that sit down. Our team opens the ballots. The judges, 2 judges, 1 from each party, sits down, goes through, opens the ballot, and put their signatures on it, so then we can then process it, scan it later. It's then taken from the table, put into the ward that it belongs to, and then closed for that day. So it's depending on how we're doing it that day. We have a process where we open and sort. We also have a process where then we scan, but these are levels, and anything that needs to be adjudicated, we adjudicate. So this is depending on how the mail comes in and the amount of judges we're able to get down to do this. We do anywhere from 10,000 to 11,000 a day. We might have 3 days where we just open and sort, right?
Yeah.
And then move on to scanning 1 day, where we put all of those through the scanners. They go up, the ballots are then taken a photo of. They're sent up to our central count machine, which is secure. So it doesn't go out. We have our own network that stays within the network. So it's not like people are afraid that people might be able to hack in or do something. But this network is secure, and the boards, it's the own boards. Nobody else can get into that network. We hope, and we always pray. But, they're bad hatters, and anything can happen in Indiana.
But I mean, I'm glad that you took me through this process because there's so many different layers that are involved. I think sometimes there's these misconceptions where, vote by mail ballots are coming back, that somehow we're just able to immediately rip those open and run them through a scanner. But the Illinois Election Code has some very strict and very specific rules that I know that your team has to follow, which is why this is often, can be a lengthy process and needs a little bit of patience and time, because it's really, one of the most safest and well-protected ways to vote, and that's because of the laws that are on top of it.
Right, correct. People have the misconception that as we put in ballots, we know what the county is.
Right.
That's incorrect. When I say processing, we don't know that until election day, where then as the 5 o'clock is polls close, when we stop processing, at that point, everything that's in our system, there's a button switch hit at 7 o'clock and it goes into the system. That's when all the tabulation begins. You cannot find out anything as far as what the county is, who's ahead, until that point.
So it's on, a server, it's well-protected information. That's very similar to how early voting works, too, where
Correct.
people are putting their ballots, but nobody has any idea of this information until the clock strikes 7 o'clock on Election Day, and it basically, that switch is flipped, and that tabulation starts, and then we start to see some of those results.
Correct.
Clint, I know this is on voters' minds, and while we have time left in this episode, let's talk about what's changed over for USPS soon. And I know it's gotten a lot of attention in the media, but let's talk about some of the misconceptions, but also what people can do. But it's this change in USPS's policy for postmarks. And they're not able to guarantee that if you put your ballot back or your piece of mail in a blue box or a mailbox, that it's going to get postmarked that very same day, correct?
Correct. My understanding, and talking to USPS, it starts with a transportation, as far as the going from the facility where your ballot the post office facility where your ballot actually goes into, and then transported to their sorting facility. It's now, according to what I understand, it's once a day. So they put in something where it might have been multiple trips. In the past, it's once a day. Once a day happens, they can't guarantee that it will get a stamp in time if you say you put it in 3 days. They're looking at a 3-day window, which gives us, it makes it difficult, and it is scary to people.
Yeah.
That being said, we'd like to try to encourage people to that first week, second week, as you get to March 10th, as we are getting closer to the election, that's a week out from the election, let's try to get those ballots in the mail at that point.
Yeah.
Right? If you can get those ballots in the mail, you should easily have a postmark on it if it's within that time frame. That's our push. That's our ask. We also ask that, if you get closer, we have 52 drop boxes around the city that you can go into, early voting site, or is where our drop boxes are. You can go in and drop them in there. Those are picked up nightly. So they come back to our office on a nightly, daily basis every night. So,
and really increasingly popular way for vote-by-mail voters to return their ballots. I think that this has really expanded, especially from the pandemic on. But I think, it shows that, a lot of vote-by-mail voters are younger voters or other people that just want to have that ballot at home, to have that time, to not feel rushed, to do their own research, and then they can go take that ballot and return it to any of the early voting sites. I'm glad that you brought that up. So it's information that's available at chicagooelections.gov. If you are a vote-by-mail voter, you can go to our website, go to our Dropbox page, look at any of the different Dropbox locations that are open, as well as the times, but they are located at all of our early voting sites and all the 50 ward sites, which will be open starting March 2nd, correct?
Correct.
And then our first drop boxes are going to be available real soon on February 12th, both at our board offices at 69 West Washington and also our new voter super site at 137 South State Street over at State and Adams. So if you are a vote-by-mail voter, you've already got your ballot, you want to get that back as soon as possible, return that to any of the drop boxes within the city of Chicago. You don't have to go to your own specific ward. You can use any one that's most convenient for you.
And that's correct. If you want to bring your ballot downtown and you're there downtown, you can actually come to 69 West Washington. As a matter of fact, that box was put out this morning.
Ah,
So it's inside the lobby and the cameras. You can come right in and drop it in. We're expecting probably to get something back starting next Wednesday, depending on some people like to get their ballot and get it right back to us, which is very good, especially right now with everything, the angst about the post office.
well, I think you and I were just discussing this on the ride over, which is that if there's a silver lining, and I think there's a lot of concern about voting by mail and making sure that it's got that postmark or having enough time, but that it might really inspire people to get that ballot back as soon as possible, which is helpful not just for the board, but also for the voter and their peace of mind, that can be voted, that can be scanned ahead of Election Day, that they can be ensured that their vote, has counted, that they're not getting that confirmation email a week after Election Day when it's been
Right.
counted during that period. So I think, we'll be doing a lot of talking with people, Clint, and our voters just to remind them that if it's that week, that March 10th into March 17th, they can take any of those options or what USPS recommends, which is ultimately take that into a USPS office and make sure that that gets a postmark. And they can see it with their own eyes, too. But we want to just recommend for voters that ultimately that you can use any of these secure drop boxes if you are a vote-by-mail voter, and that can really kind of give you your peace of mind. Well, thank you, Clint. I think that this is, a growing and very popular program. We have a lot of committed people to voting by mail, and it's been really interesting to watch that permanent roster and this program grow as long as I've been at the board. And I know that you've been doing this a very long time, and congrats on just your crew and really the Herculean effort that they have to do when they're getting back hundreds of thousands of ballots. And while this is a primary election and sometimes we see a little bit of lower turnout, it's still really inspiring to see so many people already request their ballot and get first in line for their vote-by-mail ballot.
It definitely is. That means, we want to make the process work. So if we can get that done, we want to make sure everyone is allowed to get their vote, cast their vote. As I said, we work hard to do that. And my team, they're great. I would be nowhere without them. So
Well,
I appreciate it.
Big thank you and a big shout out to all of our very hardworking board staff members who are in our vote by mail department, as well as early voting. I am going to take an opportunity now to do a new segment that we talked about during our last episode, but it's questions from the ballot box, which voters have sent in their questions of what we'd like to cover that might not be the topic of the day. And I have our first question that was submitted to us from an Alex G. And yes, this is a question that comes up often, and I'm often talking to media or other people about, but what happens if there are campaign signs on public property? Will the election board remove them? That's a very good question. The election board, we only really have jurisdiction over signage at polling places for election day or for early voting within what's called the campaign-free zone. This 100-foot limit that's marked out by blue cones so that there can be no electioneering, there can be no election volunteers trying to give you literature, there can be no campaign signs. So if there is a sign or there's any type of literature within that 100 feet, ultimately somebody at the polling place, whether it be a polling place investigator, an election judge, or elsewhere, can remove that from there. It's, I think to your question, though, Alex, is ultimately what happens for things that are outside of that 100-foot limit. That is not something that the board ultimately or any election judge can deal with. So you must call 311. And report to the city or your local alderman's office. That could be something for your ward superintendent for streets and sanitations. But that's ultimately a sanitation issue that you're going to be filing with the city for that to be removed. So ultimately, very good question. This is the season, and I think this is where a lot more signs are going to be popping up over the 4-week run to Election Day over the next month. But ultimately, this is something we see outside our early voting sites, our precinct polling places, and, it helps keep the clutter outside of right by the polling place. But ultimately, if you're seeing a sign on the public way or something else that maybe it shouldn't be there or doesn't have permission to be there, you can call 311 to report that. So, thanks for letting me deal with one of our first voter questions, Clint. A big thank you again to you for your expertise. Ultimately, again, people can go to chicagoelections.gov to learn more about voting by mail. So thank you for joining us for The City That Votes from the Chicago Board of Elections. Vote by mail applications are still open for the March 17th, 2026 primary election. So if you prefer voting from the comfort of your own home, go to chicagoelections.gov and apply today, or join our permanent vote by mail roster and have your ballots automatically sent to you ahead of every election to your own preference. And please follow us on our social media accounts. We are at Chicago Election on Facebook, Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And you can contact me at communications@chicagoelections.gov and let me know what you might want to know more about behind the scenes at the Chicago Board of Elections, or ask a question for our ballot box. And then we will answer it right on air. Until next time, I'm Max Bever, Director of Public Information.